has combination of both the small group and Dick's input. FOSS News has gone beyond what it was initially, but all seems to focus for the most part on automated systems and artificial intelligence.
Helga?
Yes.
I can go through this quickly.
Good.
It's in order also, and it's a fascinating story to me, and apparently to the news media. The basic news is all about AI taking over or not. And it is hot news. It belongs down in computer security and privacy as well. Many of these overlap, but I'm putting it here as news instead. The government's involved too now. Everyone's looking. Will artificial intelligence destroy us or set us free? Good article from today. That's why it's up here suddenly.
And the answer is yes.
Yeah, the answer is yes. And maybe both. So I think it's a great one for setting the mode, but I think most of us know what it's about. ChatGPT has had an incredible meteoric rise in usage, and there's a lot of questions about it, but everyone's using it anyway. So people are questioning that. So that's the immediate big visible object that's flying, but there's other ones up there. In sudden alarm, the experts call for a pause on ChatGPT. If we don't know everything it's doing, including known misleading items, what do we do with it? And Bard, that's Google's competition, gave a wrong answer on a public demonstration, an international public demonstration. The net result is their stock went down so quickly. It went down by $120 billion. The good news for them is that's 10% of their value. The bad news for them is you can't do things indiscriminately without getting bit, even if the government isn't watching you. It didn't take the government yet. But the government's beginning to get involved too for the same reasons. And how can you detect if someone's talking to you or some corporation totally different is pretending to be your friend or pretending to be our user group? How can you tell? And the answer is, well, we've got some answers, but they're not all that good yet. Here you go. Run a ChatGPT-like AI on your desktop, not up on their web and their cloud, but on your desktop. How can anything go wrong? Well, A, it's fascinating, and B, read all the other ones first and don't forget them. So this is a very interesting stream of articles. They are typical of many more where they came from. Look along the side for similar articles as you're looking. Some of them are good videos as well. That's really all I want to say about it. It's a hell of a lot, but you can read it and view it later. Be careful.
Very practical advice. Does anybody have any personal reactions to the AI question?
Well, I've heard that they hallucinate, which is a little scary. They'll totally make up.
I can't quite hear.
I've heard stories about how some of these generative AI things, the language ones in particular, they will
on Dick, I think.
That's really obnoxious. That's
I can't remember how to do it.
all right. I'm going to leave if that keeps up.
Sorry about that.
We are back.
Good,
Right.
good.
Yeah, I was just saying I heard that they hallucinate sometimes. That is, make up stuff that's not even true, that looks true, somehow out of its training data.
You make yours louder? I
I
can't
want
hear
to see
it.
what it does. I want to see what it does if I have it create a poem or something. I want to see what it looks like.
Hmm.
I want to have it write me a sonnet.
You need, oh, good. Never mind.
And I guess there's also AI. Has there AI generated music yet? There must be.
I think
I
so.
suspect there
AI
is.
generated music and images. There must be, yeah.
One
Definitely.
of those articles, I think, is specific to that. There's been a lawsuit, and the question is AI generated music that you created copyrightable?
We,
And
you didn't make it.
well,
You had the AI generate it for you.
that's the right question. And the question is, how much of it did you make? And how much of it should you have made so it can be copyrightable? The government's working on that one right now.
I don't know, and I guess this
Who
also
knew
comes
next
up with-
week?
I guess this is also an issue when you have AI assist you with your
Well,
academic
if you have
papers,
1%
essays, and
AI,
whatnot.
is it copyrightable?
Like I
So
guess
the
colleges
question
have
is
to
how
deal with
much?
this now in terms of how they'll grade people. Like
It's going to become interesting.
yeah, like how will they be able to determine how much of it is your work and how much is was the AI's assistance? I don't know.
And how much should be to
I
make it copyrightable?
I would like to add to this that previously there were issues with music sampling, which was an early pre-AI kind of thing.
This is true.
And there were several lawsuits, some successful, some not, by musicians whose music was, whose performances were sampled.
Yeah. Well, the rap artists do it all the time.
There again, that gets into a very gray area of, is it really the same performance? And you can make some very small changes and make it not
Well, I guess
legally the
that's true.
same.
If you change it, I guess that's true. If you take a
That's
little
the puzzle.
chunk of it and loop it, that's not the same work anymore. Clearly.
Or
Like
if you
when
do
you're-
certain
when
kinds
you're
of distort,
sampling.
Yeah.
If you distort it, you slow it down, you speed it up. What about that? Is that the same?
or
work
add extra
anymore?
notes or flourishes,
Yeah, I would
all
say
kinds of
no.
other stuff.
I would
the
say
sa-
when you've done that, it's not anymore. It's derived, but it's not the same.
Yeah, the sampling was exactly copied.
Yeah,
That was the problem there.
yeah. Exact is a problem. Taking it and tweaking it, that becomes another work, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, there's lots to figure out.
Yes.
I have one more comment on it, and it's not from me. It's from Mike Cornelison. Within a week, I think, of now, he started experimenting with Chat GPT, the culprit. And Mike, by the way, is the lead on Photox, my favorite photo program, and quite knowledgeable. He's been getting some interesting results from it. They're not always reliable, but they're very interesting. If there's time at the end, I might share some of what he found. And he's got it very carefully walled away from all his regular computer work.
What about using, well, Chat GPT might not be best optimized for this, but there must be similar AIs in use to act as like personal companions or emotional companions. I wonder how that's going to turn out. Like somebody befriending an AI personality.
I
Let's
hope
see.
that doesn't happen too soon.
I could see a lot of lonely folk going for it.
Mhm. And a lot of overworked folks, and a lot of corporations that are paying more than they want for employees.
Well, everybody's paying more than they want for employees. That's a given.
Mhm.
I'm clicking the wrong button again. I'm sorry.
Oops. Did we just have a joiner?
I hear a corporation galloping off into the distance.
Okay, I don't personally think we're going to solve the AI issue in our group, but I'm worried about it. Okay, FOSS history next. I have a video that I recommend you watch from a source that is a Linux friendly source. It is called Tilvids. Tilvids is an open source project that produces YouTube-like video using PeerTube, I believe, as the video product. But there is a web presentation by a very knowledgeable presenter going through some of the most, I guess you'd say, important of the kinds of open source and free software that have made 30 years of Linux really important. And I strongly urge that you watch that video and find out if you like watching this particular presenter, as he has several other videos that I think are worth watching.
Well, I'm glad to know that they're on a PeerTube instance, since they're
Yes.
talking about FOSS.
I thought that that was a very useful crossover piece of it too.
Yes.
Now,
And he better be followable on Mastodon.
yeah, Mastodon is thriving apparently, but is not listed among those 9 seminal moments.
Well, I guess because we're still living it. I don't know.
That's possible too. Now, on the FOSS hot software, there are several different things that we've had on that block, on that section of our agenda for a while. Is there anything that is notable there? I'm not sure.
Why don't I handle the ones I put in, because I can, again, go through them pretty quickly. Ubuntu 2304 is out, and it's pretty good. And the improvements are interesting, and you can read about it in that first link. As many of you know, I personally like Ubuntu, but I use it with a different spin of it, built from it, and that's Ubuntu Unity. And that's out, and that's smooth. I'm running it today, and I like it. And that's all for those. You can read more about each of them in there. I'll skip the Mantic Minotaur, other than to say that Mantic, that means prophetic. Minotaurs not only are not prophetic, they're not even real. So I'm a little confused.
It's for classic literature and myth. So,
but as you know, Ubuntu comes out with these 2 word names, adjective, noun, and with the same letter, and the letter is the number and sequence these days. So this is the next one. It's due out in October, but I think yesterday or the day before, it just opened its development channel where if you want, you can start playing with it and arguing with it early on. So That's interesting.
Yeah, Dick.
Here's an interesting one. There's a theme to these also, and the theme is it's all about snaps. Now it's not that simple. That's a simplification, but Ubuntu 2304 has decided that it shouldn't allow you to use package installations of other software other than snaps. Footnote, unless you're more advanced. They say if we deliver everything in our own flavor, it will be a simpler learning experience, and we know we can be responsible for it working. And that makes sense if you're Microsoft, and that makes sense if you're Apple, even more so. But it's a big surprise for open source software to say, we're not giving you the other systems. Well, they backed off some on it, and they've said, well, you can use the other ones. We're not going to do anything to make them not work. But the last I noticed, a bunch of them weren't available in Ubuntu's software center. You had to go get them somewhere else.
How about
This
the
is still
repository?
this is still in flux. They're saying by no means are we saying you can't use them. Just that we don't want to give them as a puzzle for beginners. So
Except the snaps are a damned puzzle.
Bad
we
idea.
Separate
Bad idea.
data partition, and we can't get to it in certain programs.
No,
so it's getting interesting. As a
Good.
result,
turn it into
oh,
Windows.
and one more step. I mentioned a spin of Ubuntu Unity. It's become recently official, which is to say under the hat of Ubuntu instead of independent. And there's a group of those that I think is less than a dozen flavors. And the official ones, not the 24 that use the same stuff but aren't working through Ubuntu, that smaller group has agreed with Ubuntu to phase out other alternatives. Personally, I really like AppImage as a packaging method, and I'm not the only one who's uncomfortable with this. Let's see, first of all, I came to Blend OS. Well, Ruja Saraswat is the now elderly young fellow in India. He started at age 10 bringing out his own spin. And now that he's 13, he's feeling kind of elderly. Very good English, very good programming, and very good attitude, everything good. But here he is with Ubuntu Unity now locked into that decision. And look what happened. Same guy, Ruja Saraswat, and he just came out with the second version of his Blend OS. This one says if you use any of the major Linux flavors, you'll be at home on it. It'll do all of them. It has some other nice features too. So here's an example of one of the Ubuntu flavors bringing out something else in addition that's almost the opposite. It comes with support for Fedora, for Ubuntu, for Mint, for a few other things specifically tested and okay, and probably about anything else you can throw on it, you can get to work on it. So this is very interesting to me, and I've just started using it because the second version came out 3 days ago. I've got it on my computer. It's not giving me grief, but I'm not into it far enough to tell you much. Vanilla OS is a very interesting one. Someone else brought it up. Are they online now? Not sure. Well, this is another spin-off from a different flavor from a guy that was I believe the lead programmer and first employee hired for it. And they decided he wasn't good for the group because he was questioning some questionable things going on. And they bounced him. And he happily walked off and started Vanilla OS, which is plain vanilla. No extra push in one direction or another, which is the opposite of the step Ubuntu just made. So it's part of the same story, even though Ubuntu isn't the center of this one. And it just came out with a newer version. It was tracking Ubuntu. And what do you know? The 2.0 version moved from Ubuntu to Debian, which is what Ubuntu is built upon, rather than the Ubuntu flavor of it. Everyone's shifting right or left. Now, I said he wasn't, it wasn't directly Ubuntu. He got kicked out from a totally different group for totally different reasons and started it. But he just switched it to a 2.0, a whole new way of counting for it even. And that was because of the Ubuntu issue. Look at everything that's going on. Pop OS has been out for years. Look at the fancy spelling for Pop OS, and you may find it. And it's been tracking Ubuntu. And when you go to look at it, I think you'll see it's not putting in any of those limitations, and it's not begging to get on Ubuntu's favored list, at which point it apparently would have to. So all of these are, again, one theme. Fascinating. This one, I'm not going to say much about other than it's almost the same story. This fellow thinks he's doing everything right that Thunderbird hasn't gotten right yet. And
You
it's,
can't say this one because it's not showing.
oh, sorry,
Yours is
Better
not showing.
Bird versus, that's right, I'm moving my cursor, you're not seeing that. Better Bird versus Thunderbird. A different detailed topic, but similar. Better Bird is an attempt to make Thunderbird better. It's available. A new version is available for easy download, and you can judge for yourself. I think it's better in a number of ways, but I still have mixed feelings on whether I want to switch to it.
Well, for
So-
one thing, we couldn't get it to work with our mail folders up on our separate partition. It just would not see the other partition.
I believe it is now. I think
You
we got
figured that
that
out?
tuned in. But again, starting this week, we've been working on a few of these to see what's new. And my answer is that's a very interesting one that's new for those who want to experiment. Don't leave your Thunderbird behind just now.
As our friend Gloria says, interesting.
Photox, I mentioned Mike Cornelison earlier, and he's got a brand new Photox out less than a week. And it's answered a few puzzles I had and a bunch of other interesting new capabilities. And I haven't had time to sit heavily in on that. So I'll report further, but it's ready for you to gather up and try if you like, and that link will do it. Firefox extension. Firefox is supporting this one. They call it an extension now. TinEye has been out there for a long time, but this extension built right into Firefox is new. And you can pick a picture you're interested in and say, Firefox, let TinEye tell me everything it can find about this image and images almost like it. This can be very valuable for a lot of purposes. And if the FBI is using it, why shouldn't you? So enough said.
I have a question about it. Is this something I could take a picture of a flower and look it up like the Google image search?
I believe it is, and somebody's going to want to be folding a chatbot in with it to make that even better. So we'll see what happens. But I think it is right now, and it is safe to try.
You're frozen.
Whoops. That's not me, though, is it?
No.
The screen winked off on us.
I recommend you plug this in over here. I'll do it.
You're on mute, Algot, if you're trying to talk.
My screen is bouncing a lot. Can you hear me?
It's not yours.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, that came to the end of my set within hot software, and there's a couple of other items in there. Any questions on any of mine?
My experience with TinEye has been that its goal is to find out if someone is using your image somewhere else. And if they are they doing it with your permission?
That's one of its valuable uses. I agree.
Yes. I don't know whether it has any integration with the AI kinds of tools, but that's another story.
That last one that I mentioned is ready to hook up to what you want to hook it up to. I'm sure there's 50 others.
Okay, we're at the point of GWIC's full source bootstrap, which is an interesting article about a very intriguing kind of almost OS on its own, but mostly it's a design for building an operating system, sort of like the way you do with your your Ubuntu store, but building the whole thing from a dead scratch of source code rather than the deb files or using RPMs or any of the others like that. The intent is that you can prove that this is fact from the source code that you have collected to make the exact operating system that you're looking for. And apparently this latest step that they've taken is a significant one, because that required effectively no binary blob kind of startup code, which had been necessary before. You would only be interested in this if you were not, like me, a very normal user, if you want to call it that. I don't fight against the source code, but I'm not a compiler of source code for my own use.
Where does this differ from Gen 2 Linux?
I missed that. I'm sorry, Jerry.
Where does that differ from Gen 2 Linux, which has been building from source since it started years ago?
Well, I think the difference is that GWIC is intending to make it possible for an individual to build exactly what they're looking for and be certain that it isn't anything else. Gen 2 may be very, very similar, but the bootstrap segment has been missing, and that's what GWIC has apparently solved, that you can start from a bare metal computer and add this particular scripting base and then go forward based on that script. I don't know enough about it to react personally, but I thought it was a fascinating alternative to everything being done for you, like Ubuntu's use of snaps only.
Yeah, I have not looked at Gen 2 in a number of years.
It's like the old BSD ports tree, as I recall, where you build Gen 2. But yeah, GIX is supposed to be, yeah, the only thing is it's going to be GNU stuff only, as I understand it.
Yes.
No non-free anythings.
That is the big key.
And it's also it's about reliability, as you say. I remember hearing about this at LibrePlanet a couple of times now. Reliable builds in GIX, and I think somebody's working on an accessible installer medium for it. So
that's exciting.
Yeah, so I don't know how that's going to go. I'll give it a spin probably because I can't help it.
Okay. Fedora 38 has been released, and Jerry Feldman said he was going to produce a slideshow. Are you prepared to do that? And I'll relinquish the share.
Yes, I am. Let me
All right. Let me
bring it up real quick.
unshare here.
Okay.
Unshare. That's a new one. Does that mean grab everything for yourself? Be selfish, unshare.
I'm running a share.
You are.
Yeah. You see it?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Again, we've got Fedora 38. Again, every 6 months or so, Fedora, like Ubuntu, comes out with a new release. This one's Fedora 38 with GNOME 44. And here are some of the new features. Again, it was released in late April. The new website, ignore that, and they have that following. I just forgot to update that. The standard workstation version, again, as I just said, GNOME 44. And they've added a number of new spins. I can put the spins listing up if you'd like. But the new ones are Budgie Desktop, Sway Window Manager, and Wash, which is really a phone window manager. It's actually a phone shell. Yeah. I have a couple of screens on these. A new screen lock, background apps, which I really like that feature. DNF5, which replaces micro DNF, which is really a lighter weight version of DNF. And for those of you who don't know, DNF is the command line package manager that's used primarily in Fedora. And it replaced Yum a number of years ago, and it's written in Fortran, in Python, not Fortran. And several new updates, including framer pointers, which is better for development. Should really appeal more to Dennis in this group than anyone else. And updated some programming language systems and library packages, including GCC, Golang, LLVM, Ruby, TextLive, PHP 8.2, and others. Okay, here's the new website background. And if you look at the top, I forgot to put an arrow, but right at the very top where my cursor is, this is the new background apps. So you can, from this screen, which is, you put your arrow up in the top left, and then you can switch very quickly to those other apps in the background.
Is that a standard GNOME feature, or is that a Fedora specific thing? This background.
I think that's new in GNOME 44.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, this is what I pulled up of Budgie, what Budgie looks like. I'm not going to get into a lot of details on Budgie. And this is the phone shell. again, it's more of an Android-ish type of mobile shell. It's designed more for mobile laptops and touch screens. And that's the last slide.
Nice.
I made it pretty short. Dick has a video he was going to send me a link to, but I never got it.
Ooh,
So
I'll send it. I'll add it to the
Sure.
agenda as by that. It's a second link.
Okay.
It looks promising, but you'll be the judge.
Vic, if you turn off your video and turn it on again, it might recover your. See, here you are, frozen. Turn off your video
Looks like it's getting cold in Natick.
and turn it on again. And that didn't help.
It's been it probably is kind of cool, but I don't think it got past 50 here today.
Cold enough for suspended animation. It's still suspended. Wouldn't really want to reboot.
No,
What's going on?
what's that message? You had a message back there about an applet.
I did.
Yes.
You're seeing something I'm not seeing?
Well, it went away real fast. This one here, Network Manager. So the network had a problem.
Well, I don't think that's it yet. Maybe there's more of it. No? I think you're right. He's just got way below freezing.
Maybe you want to go.
It's about minus 10 degrees, and I'm talking Celsius.
Okay, while you sort that out, Dick and Jill, I'm going to reshare the agenda screen.
The agenda screen says something about trace bitmap using Inkscape Dennis Payne.
Okay. Dennis, I guess you had something to say about using Inkscape, my favorite vector graphic program.
Yep.
I'll relinquish the screen and we'll go back to you. It's all yours.
I'm back to work. What?
All right. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Here it comes.
Okay, there's
Okay. Okay. So I have the tablet the drawing tablet that I've been using to draw in GIMP. And so I was playing around with converting those images into vector images, which is what Inkscape does. So I went over and started up with a drawing I drew.
I suppose this would be a good time for you to reboot.
I think I should.
So
Or just close.
Okay.
So this is the drawing I drew on my drawing tablet. And I already have it open over here with the trace bitmap. But if you didn't, you would go over to path. And there is trace bitmap on this option here. So once you have trace bitmap up, so right now, this is a bitmap image. So if I were to zoom in, you start to see that the lines here are jagged. They're not as smooth as if you were just drawing typically. So what you can do with this feature is you click on the image. It'll show you a little preview over on the right side over here. And if you like those settings, I haven't really played around with the settings, but you could do that. So now I can apply. Now, right now, after doing that, there are now two images here. There is the original image, and on top of that is this vector image that it traced out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the vector image in the background as the lower selection. So that's what this button right here does. So I lower it down. So now the drawing is on top, and I can select the drawing and I can delete it. And now with the drawing deleted, it's only the vector image. So you can see that the lines that used to have jagged edges are now all nice and smooth. Now, you might want to do this if you were making like a print version of something. You want to have something that can scale up better. And if you just have a pixel image, once you scale it up, you start seeing the pixels when they're printed out. But one of the reasons I played around with this was because if you look at this, you see that the creature in the background and like the floating asteroids, they're all pretty thick lines. And the image of the girl does not have thick lines. And so I wanted to make it more consistent. And so what I ended up doing was I initially did this and tried to separate out the girl, but I found that I couldn't get that to work right. So since I drew these on separate layers under GIMP, instead of doing that, I just went over and made a separate image. That doesn't have the girl in it. And then went over and made another image with just the girl in it. Now, once I did this, what I could then do would be go back to that same procedure. Make a vector drawing of it, push it to the background, and delete the original image. So now I've got the vector drawing. One of the things you can do with the vector drawing is you can say, I would like the lines to be thicker. I'm not sure how to specify how thick to make them. So if you press this, which is, let me go back to that. It's the outset function. Oh, actually, I need to click on the image first. So if you go to path and you click outset, that will make the lines thicker. The results, not what I was looking for. But as I said, this is a vector image. So if we go back, we take this, and let's zoom out a bit. I will go over here and lock the width and height. Now I can go over and expand the image.
Ooh,
And because it's a vector image, it will still look
smart.
nice. But now because it's so much bigger, when I go over and do that same outset, it doesn't get as thick as it did before. Now, this one still probably isn't what I want, but I played around with it for a little bit and eventually was able to get this version here. Apparently my computer does not like running this and the video at the same time. And so if you compare this version to the original,
Much better.
you can see that the image for the girl got much darker because I was able to increase the thickness of the lines. Now it
Dennis?
does have this. Yep.
I think I have a faster solution possible for you.
Okay.
If you go to your image of just the girl and then take your cursor down to the left where it says fill and stroke.
Yep.
It's currently says doesn't apply. So click on your girl.
Yep.
And now on the number where it says 1.39, right click your mouse. You'll get a whole bunch of line thicknesses. Give that a shot and see what you get.
I don't really see a difference.
You need to, I'm sorry, it's still unset. So do a shift left click on the stroke color that you want. Black is just above in that little gray to black section. Shift click. There you go. Now you have a 3.0 thickness, but right clicking the number will give you the option to adjust it very finely.
Yep. Well, that is a much nicer way to do it.
It's much more effective in general for line thickness.
As I said, I don't use this program very much, so that is great to know.
Mm-hmm. I think that's
but yeah, so that is what I use to fix this up. Now you can see that because these are two separate images, it does have, oh, hold on. It has this little part here. You can still see the elbow still has the asteroid behind it, but I haven't worried about fixing that up yet.
I think she's not full of any color, and so the line does not conflict with the fill. Yep. If you were to fill her elbow with blue or whatever color you wanted, as long as she's the top, the crossing asteroid line would disappear.
I ended up making a color version, but I switched it back to being a image from in GIMP, so it's back to being a pixel image. So this was the one that I ended up creating afterwards.
Very nice.
Well done.
So that's been my adventures with Inkscape so far.
Okay. Questions from anybody on that process? Okay, back to sharing for the agenda. And we are at hot hardware. I think this is Dick's entry.
Yep. Let's see. First of all, never mind. I want to see if my head's moving again. I think so. let's see. First of all, we don't go into Boston that often, but when we do, we often stop in Cambridge at Micro Center. Very famous chain of stores. And back when we lived closer, they were even better, more available. But about this time last week, we had a chance to visit Micro Center for the first time directly in years. And we were looking for something, and they led us to a wrong solution for the problem that was about 10 times as expensive. And just as I was giving up on that, another salesperson came by and said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Well, here's what I was looking for, but I think the price is out of line." He said, "Come along with me." And we found a solution. And I went home with it. And in addition to that, they had a thumb drive on sale, which was 128 gigs, a lot bigger than what's normally in my pocket when I walk around. And I said, that would be quite nice. I could put Ventoy on one partition of it, and then any ISO file that I put there for any operating system, I can just click and it will.
It should be back.
Here we are again. Okay, so these drives look to me like might be able to have a regular area for keeping other people's files and a Ventoy drive so you can just double click the IS file and poof, it's up on your computer as if it were installed, almost. And that seemed like a good idea. So I went home with one. I was about to go home with the second one, and I saw this is USB 3.1. Next to it, up on their rack, were a bunch of USB 3.2 ones at the same price. So I came home with one of each. And I came home with the other gadget, which was to add Bluetooth to our TV. Why? Well, we've had a cable running from our big screen TV to where we're sitting so we can plug it into a laptop and project onto the big screen everything we're doing. Very nice if you're demonstrating something locally and or just watching this kind of a meeting. And unfortunately, one of the ends of the HDMI cable got broken, and we were debating adding a new cable, and it's a 25-foot HDMI cable. They're not all that cheap. So I said, what's the alternative to putting Bluetooth on the TV? I didn't want Wi-Fi. I just wanted it very local. So Bluetooth seemed better. And what are the options? That's what I was asking for. And they came up with two solutions. They came up with one solution after going through all the other options I was mentioning. The guy who picked me up and took me to the right aisle found ones as cheap as $20. That's the lowercase one here. I said, well, it's about a wash, and I don't know which one will be better. I think I'll think that one over first. Went home, went online, and pretty quickly found this one on eBay.
This one.
The capital this one on eBay looked about identical, and the only difference was instead of $20, it was $2, including shipping from the US. Yes, not from China. So we got one in. Came in a day or two ago, and we've tried it once so far. can't find it with our Bluetooth. Don't know why yet. It might be something on the TV setting, but let's say we're not too pleased, but it might be our fault. We don't know yet. So tune in next month on this one, or for $2, try your own.
You didn't finish
The
USB
upper one also bounced back on us in an interesting way. We had come back with one of them.
thumb
It's
drive
going
or
the 128 gig thumb drive, and it's their own brand, by the way, which doesn't mean too much. It means that they ordered enough, so the company made them with their name on the outside. But nonetheless, with their name on it, and I thought Micro Center was really good. It ought to be good. And USB 3.1 is pretty good. And as I said, it would meet a need. It's also transparent. It's yellow, transparent plastic. That's cute if you want to look at whether there's anything inside. But it turns out for this particular line of drives, it's mandatory if you want to see the LED activity light that's in all of them. But if you don't get the rare transparent one, you won't see that LED light. It's only the case going opaque. It's crazy, in my opinion. So the transparent one is both interesting and, in my book, necessary for some debugging. I want to know where's the thumb drive actually at if there's some problem. So be sure to get the transparent version of it if you want an LED activity light and that you can see. The price is absolutely right. But instead of getting two, I came home with the other one, the USB 3.2. Terrible, slower than this one by far. They're all very fast for reading. That's mostly what I'll be doing with it. But for setting it up, slow as molasses, nowhere near 3.2. I went online to see what the problem was. And this is a known culprit. This other one from Kingston is, they say it can't do anywhere near 3.0. So I thought, no problem. I'll just call them and tell them, send me one more of the Micro Center version and put it in an envelope and I'll mail the other one back to you. They're the same price, no problem. I emailed that and it seemed to bounce. I couldn't find any place to email it that was appropriate. I could get to tech support, but getting to something like this, a customer asked for correction, it was amazingly opaque. I went back to my old files from Micro Center back when we were nearer and more active. And I found one from a couple of decades back, not all the way, but I guess we were in Cambridge a lot more with clients. And there was a day we solved a problem for them, got to know the manager because the top guy in tech support had the manager notified while we were still there to fix a problem. We'd bought a computer from them and it had a defective keyboard. Turned out all the replacement ones they had the same defect in the keyboard. So they were sort of grateful that we flagged it. And I had a bunch of names written down. I went and read them and I couldn't find any of them. But I did find the name of the general manager up online with no contact information. And using the clues I had from the old ones, I coded his name in the same format. And sure enough, I got to him. And I said, I can't get to info@microcenter.com, which I consider amazing. But if I got to you, please send this on to info. and I need some help. Got a message back fairly promptly. I think I sent mine late in the day and got one first thing in the morning. And he introduced himself and said, I'll help you. How can I help you? And I said, I sent him the whole problem written up and said this was going to go into someone else, but if you can do it, fine, or if you can pass it on. And it went in. And let's see, most of a week later, I have no response. I've called Micro Center. I've asked them to notify him. I've asked them to switch me to him. I've asked if they have any other way. Can they even confirm he got my second message? Can they give me his phone number? Folks, you can't get there from here at Micro Center. This to me is so astonishing. I don't know what to make of it. Now, if you want to return, look online and it'll tell you instant. You don't even have to complain about it. Just say, I'd rather return it. And you've got 30 days in person in the store. Well, it's not worth a trip. And I'm just amazed that somebody far further than I am from it could buy something, go home, and live to regret it. And it could be $1,000 item as easy as a $10 item. So I'm very unhappy at this moment. I'm just astonished that the store I thought was the most reliable one is set up this way now to filter you so you literally can't do email on half the topics, including customer satisfaction ones, from afar. As far as I can tell, I found no solution yet. Back next month, see what happens. But it's great news if you're near them. And
Dick, about Micro Center, they have gone over to a chat system online for tech support. Yeah. You immediately reach somebody, and I think it's somebody in their store, but you have to use their chat pop-up.
Yeah, a lot of.
I'll give that a try. Thank you, but
I have had good.
Happy about it, and nobody of the many people I could talk to at Micro Center on the way to not getting to the guy that could help. Nobody mentioned that. That's interesting too.
They do have a chat function.
Yes. I prefer not to use it. We keep our records in email flavor for that sort of thing.
All I do is I save the chat, and I will, during the chat, I will frequently copy paste to a document.
Right. I can email the result of the conversation to myself. I don't consider that a step up, but perhaps I'm missing something. Anyway, on all of these drives, the warning is when they're down at this price level, and plenty are this week out on eBay, that's a sign that they write very slowly. Not a problem in my case. Perhaps yours. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Dick. We're into the section Hot Internet, and probably it makes sense to mention a couple of these without going into detail. One is the blue WGBH issue. They're GBH news in the Fediverse, which most people are still calling Mastodon because it's the big elephant, shall I say?
For most people, it's their first entry to the Fediverse.
That's right.
So that's why. But yes, it's the elephant in the room.
GBH is questioning the value of Twitter in recent days, and NPR has recently stopped posting to Twitter to the result that apparently Elon Musk has written that if they don't reactivate, he may reassign their name to somebody else, to some other corporation that could use it. And that battle will be very interesting, considering NPR is probably a trademark. But that's quick. Laura Michaels, I don't think is with us today, but she has been an active member of the group and offered up her list of web development resources, a nice link to several different things that you might look at, all in discussion of the topic of making web pages. The free course from a person who used to live in Rentham, Massachusetts, about using JavaScript, which is part of the process of making modern web pages anyway. Those are the background for a presentation that I hope I can make clearly, but not too quickly because it's a complex task. I'm thinking I may break up making a web page into at least 3 segments. Today being how a basic web page is put together. And to do that, I'll continue sharing my screen and do it properly this time, going to a link at my website, runeman.org, in the articles that are NatickFOSS articles about a more general job of doing web updates. I added details into the process of making web pages, which is basically 3 components. Most modern web pages rely on code that is called HTML code. That's close to the revolving circle on my screen here. I'll show you HTML in a minute. The second is something known as cascading style sheets, a very important piece of making modern web pages. And finally, interactive work, which generally these days relies on the third web component known as JavaScript. There are alternatives to many pieces of this, but not the HTML part. All right. Getting started is very easy. You need a text editor. I personally use Kate. You can use the GNOME text editor, Notepad++ of Windows fame, and any other is valid as a text editor, but do not use a word processor if you want to make web pages. I know that there are other methods. Dick, for example, uses his it's called not Sailfish. Dick, can you remind me what your
SeaMonkey Composer?
There you go.
I use Genie, which is a text editor.
There you go. Second piece
And
is
yes. On that one topic, I am currently looking into what you just warned about. LibreOffice Word has an HTML mode, and it's said to be very good for this. I'm just starting to look at it.
I hope we can take a look at that down the line then.
Okay.
The second component you will need is a browser, because in fact, the web is very much moderated by the presence of your browser. If your browser doesn't do a good job, things that developers make will not show the way they're intended. And then the third component, which most of you have, is a computer. But you should not expect to be able to do effective web page development if you're working on a phone, and probably not a tablet, because there's a whole bunch of basic steps of typing that are not convenient on either of those platforms. So what you'll do is start your computer, open your text editor, write your code, and save it as some sort of file, and then open the file in your browser, all locally on your computer. You do not need a hosted site. You don't need to figure out all the ins and outs of that to get going. When you make changes, if you don't like what you see, you will need to get into the habit of reloading your file after you've saved the changes. That's the key. A basic web page is coded purely in hypertext markup language. And I always get lazy when I say mark down in other contexts, which is a style of writing that we might mention in this context later, but markup is part of this HTML acronym. And looking here, I'm going to bump the size up so that it's a little easier for people to see, is a minimal web page code. These are the absolute minimum pieces that make a legal web page. You have to declare what type of document you're making. In this case, the first line says that this is an exclamation point doc type HTML, and those words are in the left and right greater and less sign brackets, the angle brackets. Each piece is identified by a bracketed pair, almost always. The full page is an HTML bracket with the beginning and the end HTML all by itself, and then slash HTML at the end to say that this is the full document. The document needs a head section and a body section. Those are called elements as well as being called sections, but each element typically is composed of two tagged pieces, body and body. If you don't put the ending body in, most modern browsers will make it in for you, but you don't want to do that if you're going to do a good job of developing your very own pages. You want to get used to typing in the parts that are needed. And if you click on this link, what you will see is an otherwise boring page that says "Hello World," which was the text that was between the paragraph tags. Hello World. Nothing fancy, but that's as small as it gets. The other piece I probably didn't mention was that a title is necessary to have it appear in your browser's tab. And if you go over here, you'll see that it doesn't say "Hello World," it says "minimal." And that was because that was what the title was made to be. You can have the title be completely different from the header or the content topic, although that's not typically done. Okay. Questions before I go any further?
One correction, Algot.
Yes?
Bob Premack corrected me. I said LibreOffice Word. Word is the Microsoft equivalent, of course.
Yes,
LibreOffice Writer is the equivalent that I meant to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, it's right without the R at the end.
Not according to my screen.
Let me get it up.
Yeah,
It is.
I think when I
Oh, you're
launch
right.
it,
It is writer.
yeah, when I launch it,
I
from,
win.
yeah, when I launch it from the run dialog, I type in LO writer, one word.
Yeah,
to open it.
it changed. It used to be red.
Yeah, maybe it was one time, but it hasn't been for as long as I've been messing with it.
It changed. I was wrong. Dick was right.
Is good.
I should mention, with all corrections accepted, that HTML, the markup language, is in its 5th version, and it is the preferred version if you're going to do any new documents. I will note that as you examine a web page, you will sometimes see that the code starts with something more complicated, like doc type HTML public WC3D DTD HTML 4. Good grief. They've simplified things, but if you have that declaration, then you have other rules about writing that you have to follow. And I recommend that if you start doing this on your own, that you actually do stick with HTML5 and its simpler declaration. Now, after you have your content, you're going to wind up, as I said, with an otherwise totally simple text. This is actually the live text with one difference, and I'll let you scan what you see here on this page and see if you can find, without too much clue from me, what's different.
Well, you don't have paragraphs.
And I don't intentionally, because paragraphs are actually a sort of code that your text does not have to be. Anything that's in the body that is written as text is text. Paragraphs are convenient because they automatically, based on the behavior of the browser interpreter, automatically chunk things into sections so that a paragraph is separated by a blank line from the next. If I were to go in here and simply tap the enter key and type something new, what you should notice is it looks fine here, but when I save this and open it in my browser, and I'm not sure everybody can see how small this is at the moment. I can bump it higher. That's not on 2 lines. If you used paragraphs between paragraph tags to split your lines, there would be a gap between the 2 lines. So the point is, you can make mistakes. And if you make mistakes, you need to understand why they are mistakes. Okay, I have to be careful that I don't turn off the wrong thing here.
Just a comment
There you go.
Paragraphs. The screen readers use them to, like, you can navigate by paragraph on a website.
Yes.
Like for skim reading. So it's an important bit of structure for that.
Absolutely. The reality of doing web pages is that you need to deal with all those issues and the issues of making your page accessible wherever possible. And I constantly have to be apologetic to the people who use my website because it's exceptionally graphic heavy. And we'll get to some point where we talk about those details if people are that interested in the topic. But I just entered a new tag there in order to do 2 things. One was to show that you can break your line by adding a break tag. And I'm also going to mention that this break tag is one of a very few that violate the rule that says you need to open and close a tag. There is no second part to a line break. Somebody decided way, way back, maybe it was even the original HTML guy, Generally, is that his name? Not
Tim
Jenner.
Berners-Lee.
Berners-Lee, who wrote the first web page using HTML, which was his coding system, and just decided there were a few things that were silly to have closing tags, like a line break.
Yeah, or a no break space. Yeah.
So if you do BR in a pair of those angle brackets, you will get a line break. And let me save that and then jump back to my minimum web page and reload. As the point is, you always have to reload to see the changes you made, because web pages are generally static. And that means what you see is what you're going to see until you restart your browser and go back to that page and see any changes that somebody has made. Or if you're doing your own web development, checking your work by regularly refreshing what you do. It's very time-consuming, but not hard if you think about it. Now, this page is totally bland. It's a white background because that's how my browser is set. It's black text of a standard size. I've blown it up using browser tools to make it 150% larger than usual. But if you're going to do things to control your text in fancy ways, you're going to need to begin to go beyond HTML to create a fancy view for people. It will not necessarily help the sight impaired, although if you do a very good job, you can indicate that something is big red text as opposed to being normal black text on a white background. And you can add images and do all sorts of great stuff. But I'd like to consider stopping at this point because I've used most of half an hour to talk about this much. And that may be good enough to get some of you interested in trying this yourself. As I said, there is only a very simple set of steps that you need to take. Start your computer, open your text editor, write your code, save it. Generally save it HTML as the extension, because that is standard for the web, in spite of Microsoft's efforts to make it HTML standard. HTML is what it's called, and that's what I think you should use. And the only name that makes a difference is that you almost always save the core of any folder as index.html. Index means you'll see the name, you will automatically see the page when you go to a site that is listed as a folder, like up here at the top of my page. You'll note it does not say 2023 update index. It says 2023 update with a right slash. If you don't put an index into that folder, you will not see what you're supposed to. The other things to watch out for are, it is best to use all lowercase for the name of something. Avoid the HTMX extension, as I said. That is not an unbreakable problem. But if you're used to typing HTML in names, you won't find the HTML file that somebody decided was better extension. You want to avoid spaces like the plague. Do not say good space books HTML. If you do that, you will cause your web page to require a hash of symbols to replace the meaning of the space. And sometimes you will see that because people do add spaces, and it makes your URL, which is this thing at the top, makes your URL real bust as far as figuring it out. If you do caps in your title of your page, then you have committed everybody to using caps when they try to get to your page. That's why I say best stay with just lowercase. You can do things like putting dashes or underscores if you want, but you're better off not. Those are some of the key elements of making a web page. If this group is interested, you certainly can read this page by itself, but also I will continue happily in other weeks, other meetings to explain why CSS matters. Ooh, look at how big that text is. And how interactive web pages are done with JavaScript. But that's not for today. I'd entertain questions before we go on. All right, I don't hear any questions. So back to here so I can unshare my screen. Oh, wait, I want to go back to the archive to find out where we're headed next. Thank you. Computer security. I think we begin with Dick again.
Okay. Let me see.
Did you take out parenting tech?
Did I take it out?
Yeah, are you going to talk about it? Because it wasn't in the one that you sent
It's
me.
new.
Oh,
Another one I just added this morning. It's such a,
Bless you.
thank you. That came in stereo, I hope.
At least.
2 nostrils. Let's see. Parenting tech. This is surveillance equipment so you can, from work, see if your kid is okay until you get home, whatever.
Yeah, so your kids will never trust you.
Sounds like a great idea, and a lot of people are installing it. But this article is taking the other side of it, which is if you really want to make your home available to others, including state surveillance, these are the tools to do it with. And not just your state. Most of them are being made in China, and they don't tell you everything they can do. Been a number of them already found that way. So I'm not sure what to do as a solution if you really want the service, but I'd start by being very careful that you have some reason to trust the firmware and the software. You've got a new tool for other people to look in your house. Apple, wait a minute. Is that mine? Then I'm making a little trouble on the screen.
There's other reasons I
There
wouldn't.
we go. Your screen was getting blocked by something on mine. Let's see. Firefox browsers and Firefox Focus. Well, first of all, they're open source. And second of all, they're taking great pains to avoid these problems. That's not to say they never have any, and I thought that was a good place to start on a safe open source solution for your normal when you think you want to go online as opposed to the prior topic. This one already got mentioned.
This one, what is this?
Twitter claims NPR is state affiliated. And if somebody else wants to address it further, they may. That's a good article on it. And who put in unified payment system in India? Sounds interesting.
That one's mine, Dick.
Good.
It comes in not so much as free open source software, but as a thing that's becoming pervasive, not just here in the United States, where I have found I go to very few stores and pay cash. I do almost all my things these days using a credit card or a debit card. There is at my bank a system that allows people to send me money or for me to send them money that just doesn't involve a check, and it doesn't involve anything but an electronic transfer of the funds. It would appear that in India, they are trying to create a countrywide, statewide, unified payment system that probably represents the ability for one credit card company like Discover or Visa or the others of that type to be able to eventually be used to transfer money from me to a vendor or from a person to a person by unifying the whole system. And it hasn't hit here in the United States as yet, but I think that that's the implication of it. It's probably parallel to the question of how good artificial intelligence systems are. I don't know how I feel about a completely worldwide unified payment system that transparently allows me in 30 seconds to give $3 or $30 or $300 or $3,000, depending on how I type my decimal point. It makes me nervous at the same time as it intrigues me.
I use PayPal for that.
Yes?
For instance, we had a house guest who wanted to pay us back for taking her out to dinner. And I said, can you do it on PayPal? And she said, oh, yeah. And so we did it that way because she didn't have any cash with her.
Seems like one step in that direction. And apparently, India is not unique in its effort to do this kind of thing. It's just that they are officially trying to make it happen, as opposed to just the bank transfer process that is currently in place here in the United States.
And which is slow.
It'll sure be
For most
convenient.
banks.
I would think it is, yes.
Yeah.
I did pay my taxes that way this year, though,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody complained.
Good.
Yeah.
Maybe I should complain because I had to pay them, but
Oh yeah, you owed them, so you should complain. Yeah.
I do not complain about paying a reasonable amount of taxes to have a good government. I do complain about people not paying taxes.
Or having a bad government.
Right.
all right. All right. Is anybody who was at Science on State Street intrigued to say how it went for them?
I thought it was quite good, other than not as much traffic as we might have gotten, but we had a lot of interesting people, and I do want to mention that subsequent to it, about a week later, they posted a few selected illustrations on their report of it, which the link is going to, and one of them is us. So they had 55 exhibitors, so we made the cut list.
So,
I like the fact I like Dennis's game console, which helped to attract people.
Yeah, the parents kept coming over to show their kids, and the kids kept saying, "What is that?"
Hey, kids, that's the kind of computer game we used to play.
It was a great attention drawer.
Mhm.
I thought it was funny. There was one woman that came up and asked, "Why is there an arcade machine?" So I started explaining about open source, and she's there. All right, I get what open source is, but why is there an arcade machine? And finally, I understood, and I'm there. Oh, this is to attract people over. And she's there. Oh, okay.
Well,
It gets people to come over and reminisce. And for the ones who don't, it gets them to come over and complain.
well, what I was going to ask is what sort of things were competing for your attention?
It was quite a magnet.
Yeah, I'm sure.
There were lots of different presenters there. Right next to us was a person who was showing how batteries are made by trying to create one on the spot using a bucket and some contents that transmitted electricity from the case of the bucket to an cathode?
To an anode somewhere.
Anode. I
Cathode
keep
is
those
where the
two in my
electrons-
head backwards.
Yeah, the cathode is what contributes the electrons. It's the negatively charged thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought his booth was very
That's
interesting.
funny. That's interesting. Yeah.
And there were
I think
the military there from Natick Labs showing how their equipment preserves the military's lives.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
There was a young fellow who put on the entire suit of gear so he could walk around. He's probably 10 years old, and he looked like a really cute little soldier.
I missed that.
Or a space alien in environment.
That's true, too.
And we were in one of 3 or 4 separate areas. They weren't far apart, but all the exhibits we were seeing were maybe a third.
Okay.
For next year, I hope.
I hope that it will be as much fun next year as it was for those of us that got to attend. And we would encourage everybody who has a possible chance to consider joining that Science on State Street NatickFOSS group next time. Okay, I think we're down to the game section. Speaking of Dennis and his arcade machine. Apparently, the final posting of this agenda suggested that Dennis Payne was going to talk about word apply, and if he wants to, I'll let him. But that was my contribution.
Oh,
Dennis has been, I think, working on another game rather than this one. Is that true, Dennis?
Well, the other game that I was working on, I've mainly showed that here last time, so
yeah,
I don't think we need to have another demo of that at the moment. There's not a huge amount that has changed in that.
I think you also posted a nice kind of a video intro to making the game. What was that called?
I did a trailer for the game. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I hope everybody will see that. Maybe we can add the trailer's link here the next day or two.
Will you,
It's
will you two
it's-
please just send me what corrections you would put there? I
It's
can
one
get
of those-
everything.
it's one of those things that I think open source games do really badly is we don't do enough marketing. People don't hear about our games. So I feel like we need to go over and make trailers for our games and
Yeah,
other things to attract people's attention.
Aha.
yeah.
I haven't
Very-
found that it succeeds yet, but I
Well,
keep
It's a
trying.
very hard thing to do. Is getting people's attention is very hard, especially. I mean, there's
Oh,
just
yeah.
so much out there. It's like it has to be a really spectacular trailer made probably with funds way beyond your budget to get much attention. I'm afraid.
That's sometimes true.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think the trailer has worked pretty well. I've gotten a lot of good positive results of for the trailer. So
Okay.
I think that one has worked pretty well because of the fact that I designed it to be cheesy. You know,
Yeah, that
it's
helps. That
it's
actually can
supposed to
help
be a
with game
funny
trailer.
thing.
Yeah,
So.
I think for a game that might be good.
Might be good for these meetings.
Mm. We'll have to put that into our board of directors conversations as we go
Promoting
forward.
Promoting the meeting.
So
Yeah.
do we get to see anything about this word-a-plea?
Absolutely. I'm ready to switch over to that. There is an article that I did, which is listed. Let me see if I can get here to the NatickFOSS demos page. Are you going to come up? There you go. And note that anytime I try to do something that is a major discussion here, it does go to this demos page, which I think if we look ahead might turn into something that becomes part of the future NatickFOSS web presence rather than being separate, just the way the current web presence has all the archives of our agendas. But that's for later. Here we go with Word Apply. It's a fairly simple game. Its design is to compete in a sort of way with Wordle. Those of you who remember hearing the presentation on Wordle that took off like a rocket
Man, sure
and
did.
became so popular that the New York Times paid its author in 7 figures to buy him out.
Yeah.
Word-Apply was promoted by the Guardian news organization as something of a competitive process. Game is simple, can be challenging. You enter up to 5 words, trying to include a starter piece. On their lead-in page, they show 5 words entered for ERA, and then you would click the submit button and find out how well you did on that set of words. Here's one recent set with rent, and my 3 guesses. I didn't go the whole way, but this is your style of entry screen where rent is fit into the middle of non-referential, non-referentially, and irreverently. All those words did successfully contain the answer.
Yeah.
And I was successful in this particular case. I had 100% as long as the longest word that they knew about. And I used 68 letters to get there, and then it lists my set. And if you click the share button, you will get a shareable brag thing that says, look at how well I did, if you want to post it to a social network or just keep a record of it.
Yeah.
Now, if you go to the actual web page, which you can perhaps note I have pinned as one of my multitude of choices, this was my last success or failure. I only was 91% on yesterday's. I did not play today's. So if I clicked on play next puzzle, we'll see where we are. And we have to do words larger than raft. Anybody have a quick suggestion?
Draft.
Graft.
D-R-A-F-T.
After.
Graft is good.
How about draftee instead of draft?
Draft E is good.
That's a little longer.
Later.
Rafter.
What?
I think
I'm
that's
getting
good.
too many answers over the same line. So draftee, I would not submit, but just enter. If I if I submit, it's like hitting enter. If I reveal, I would say, okay, that's my best guess. I'm giving up. So I don't want to do that.
Question: are hyphens
Dave?
allowed?
Hyphens are not allowed.
Boo. Draft.
So draft.
How about craftsmanship?
Men.
Craftsman.
Oh, good.
Yes.
You've been playing this.
I've been playing this. I like it a lot. Oh, look at that. Look at that. So
find the longest word that contains.
That's their longest word.
Oh, their longest word.
Ooh.
Yes. And I happen to have successfully, totally off the cuff, no prompting, no, I'm being completely honest here. I'm really just too smart for my own good.
But you also had help in this one.
I did have help.
You had
Anyway, this keeps track on your computer of whether or not you've played. So if I had wanted to cheat, I could have gone and made another computer be the storage place and then come in here and faked you all out by choosing craftsmanship. And I did not do that. I promise I did not
Can
do
you,
that.
if you delete the cookies with the padlock up on the screen there?
I suspect you could, yes.
If you did that, you could probably cheat, yes. If it's stored locally only, yeah. If it's stored as cookies, you could.
I believe that is possible.
And then when you come back, it would be as if you haven't played yet.
Right.
So yeah, you could. I mean,
It's easier to just use a private window, but
just use it as well. You could always do that too. You could always just open an incognito private window, whatever they call it, in your browser.
Now, there are other ways to cheat if you want, but the point is these kinds of games are quick and easy, and who cares if you get it right or not? They're just for fun.
Yep.
And that's why I think that they can be successful.
I will say that the article describing how he came up with this, I felt was a really good article and explained
Absolutely.
the really bad idea he had initially and how his brother came up with this idea.
So I still don't quite understand what you do. They give you a prompt like raft, and you're supposed to come up with as many words as you can that include that. Is that the idea? Or
Yes, that's
I'm
the
missing
idea.
something here. Okay.
Not only as many words, but as long words, and you only have
5 guesses.
5 guesses.
Yep.
So you want to. You don't want to give them 5 little short words. You want to give them 5 long words if you can.
Okay, I get it. Because you only have 5. You can only plug in 5 words.
You
Correct.
can only type in 5 words. Yep.
Okay. All right, gotcha.
Under one
Or
name.
I can give up right now and reveal and see what they chose as their longest word. It might
longest word.
match
That's the
or it
thing.
might be different.
Okay, so you have to make long words. So the idea is that you have to guess their longest word.
Correct.
That includes the letters they give you as a prompt.
Exactly.
So yeah, the longer the better, I guess, when you make your 5, if you've only got 5.
The other nice piece about this game, as well as the Wordle, you can start at the beginning of their day and take 24 hours to play the game if you just want to really put your mind to the test over a long period of time. There's no clock running except for the 24-hour limit on their current word.
But you'd still only have 5 guesses, no matter.
You still only have 5 guesses.
You just have all day to do it.
Yes.
Okay.
And I like that lack of pressure. It's not like the shippy 1984, which Dennis very kindly talked to us about last time.
Yes.
Where if you don't move and you don't shoot, you're dead.
Yeah, this is kind of. I mean, because you might come to I notice in games like this, I used to play an anagram game on another site, that sometimes when you're not even thinking about it, clues, words come to you if you don't have the clock running. It's great.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. What time does the 24 hours? Is it universal time or is it something else?
Local time.
Local time.
It turns out that the 24-hour clock on this game begins at 6 p.m. Eastern time because it's the Guardian, which is in the UK.
All right.
So it's probably some middle of their day or midnight of their time zone.
6 o'clock.
Yeah, it's either midnight or noon Greenwich time.
Something like that, yeah.
But it is Greenwich time, and Linux uses Greenwich time to calibrate itself, so you'll be able to set it up that way.
If it's 6 p.m.,
4 hours, but who's counting?
5 hours.
That's 22. Well, the UK local time, it would be. It would be 2300.
I think
Zulu time, Greenwich time, it would be 2200.
In any case, I'm not sure, but it may